Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and our continuing series Castlevania Chronicles, where I review every single mainline Castlevania game in a retrospective fashion. And if you can't tell already, this is a bonus episode because on Halloween, Hidden Palace released a Gamecom prototype of Symphony of the Night. This is basically the same game you played on PlayStation 1, except a highly cut down prototype version because the Gamecom definitely was no PlayStation 1. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But somebody on my Twitter suggested I play this game and tuck it in as a bonus episode, and I figured why not? I'm always advocating for the release of rare and obscure prototypes on the channel, and when I can, I dump and give away stuff for free. So of course I want to give a spotlight to something like this. Now off the top, is the Gamecom version of Symphony of the Night anywhere near as good as the PlayStation 1 release? Well, come on, look at the screen. We can kind of answer that without even having to talk about it, but no, this is not Symphony of the Night. But what it's actually doing is relatively impressive. I expected this to be a lot worse than it really was. I was expecting kind of those Tiger handhelds from back in the 80s, but you can see the game structure pretty much does adhere to what you would expect in Symphony of the Night, at least at the beginning areas. It does definitely branch off here and there, but in the opening of the game, it's basically operating the exact same manner that the console release would. Now obviously this never released, the Gamecom was not a successful handheld, but it does have the same overall vibe going on. It's the same corridor, just with a few less enemies, and of course as you go through, you can level up in this game as well. Now if there's a pause menu or an equip menu, I certainly could not find it. I tried every combination of every button for the Gamecom emulator and I could not get into a menu. If it's possible, it just wasn't working for me. But right when you go through this gateway, just like in the original game, you get this cutscene with death. And most of the dialogue does stay true to the script of the PlayStation 1 original. Some things are truncated or made shorter, but that's still a really good death sprite. There's less frames of animation, but it looks like he's supposed to. If we go over to the PlayStation 1 version right now, you can see that it's the exact same setting. This was supposed to be a one-to-one remake, or honestly a demake of Symphony of the Night, a port to the Gamecom, but it is impressive just how much they were able to fit. Of course, death doesn't look near as good. It's in black and white. You don't get that swirling vortex in the background, but for the most part, the things that you would expect to be here are in fact here, and you can even tell with the low resolution and the black and white graphics, those are bodies on pikes in the background. You can even see the top of Dracula's castle, where we'll finally meet Dracula again and Richter later on. Now I don't know how far this prototype goes. I played enough for the capture so we could talk about it, and I don't know that I'm going to go any further into the game outside of, my own interest. I don't think I'll make any more videos on this, but it is so much fun to see something like this happen. Last year we got the Castlevania game on Dreamcast, the unreleased prototype, alpha or beta depending on how you want to look at it, and this year we have another prototype for Symphony of the Night. Now you can tell right there as you walk into the alchemy laboratory, things are now starting to branch away. They're cutting out different hallways and they're condensing the game down. But again, this looks like a really authentic version of what you would expect for Symphony of the Night. Things are relatively in the same place. The sprites look like they are taken from the PlayStation 1 version and down converted to run on something like the Gamecom. But it is just surprising how close this actually is to the source material. Now one thing I will say has absolutely nothing to do with the source material whatsoever, and is a major downgrade, is going to be in the music, and I'll let you listen to that in just a second. But the backgrounds here, of course, we just get a white screen. We don't get as many details as we did in the PlayStation 1, but there's enough there to identify what's going on. But like I said, the audio, it's a prototype, but the Gamecom wasn't great with audio, so go ahead and listen for 45 seconds and I'll be right back. So of all the things the developer tried to bring over as close to the original game as possible, obviously the soundtrack is not one of them. But that is not surprising at all. The PlayStation 1 was an optical disc and had much better storage capacity than a flash ROM on something like a Gamecom, so you really shouldn't even expect the audio to be similar. Although I do wish that they had used something that was a little bit more identifiable as Symphony of the Night music, because that just sounds like a little beat boop track from pretty much any game you possibly could imagine. Now again, this is a prototype, but the jumping controls are very strange. You have to hold down the jump button to get to the height of your jump, and you don't want to start moving left or right until you initiate that jump, or else you're really not going to be able to jump correctly. You'll see I missed one right there. But again, moving back over to the PlayStation 1 version, you can see the same sprites in the background that you can in the Gamecom version. That's how close some things really are. Of course, I wouldn't recommend playing the Gamecom version over the PlayStation 1 version, but from a purely curiosity standpoint, it is really fun to see this in motion. And it's slightly unfortunate that it didn't actually release, because the Gamecom doesn't have that many games and it has even less good games. This may be one of the best games on the Gamecom, even as a prototype. Leave me a comment down below. Have you ever played a Gamecom before? Do you own one? Are you interested in them? I'm really curious to hear what the responses are going to be to a query such as that, because I'm assuming 99 out of 100 people are probably going to say they've never even seen one in their life. Because I remember seeing Gamecoms for sale back in the day, even when they were on clearance, and they cost basically nothing towards the end. But life can be tight in this game. Trying to get the range to attack your opponent without getting hit is very difficult, and the height of certain opponents, you can either punch or slash directly above them. So sometimes the most advisable thing is to actually back out of the screen and allow yourself that extra space to try to hit that skeleton. But you'll see there, that dagger still flies over his head and doesn't make contact. I'm sure a lot of this would have been adjusted as the game got through further development, but it isn't here, so I just have to talk about it as it exists. But the fact that it exists at all in and of itself is amazing. Like I said earlier, I'm always advocating for the release of prototypes, and it's so nice to see something like this in fans' hands versus in a private collection where only one person can ever enjoy it. You'll see we got the leap stone there, and again, things are just starting to show up a lot earlier than in the base PlayStation 1 game, and I'm assuming the further you get, the more short of an experience this is really going to be. But you get to the Royal Chapel here, and then suddenly there is a save spot. Definitely not the same as the original game, and it is all a password-based system. But if we jump back to PlayStation 1, you can see the background does for the most part match. The designers of this game were really trying their damnedest to make this look and feel like Symphony of the Night. Unfortunately, on the sound front, and not so much. But you'll see here, we'll pick up this axe. We're going to go into the first boss fight of both the Gamecom version of the game as well as the PlayStation 1 version. And for a black and white low resolution screen, the art that they have in the background is readable, and that's a big compliment. The designers were able to really do a lot with it. Of course, it's not going to be something like this, or this rich purple and green and blue, but the boss sprites, the background layers, everything that's in the PlayStation 1 version here does kind of go over to the Gamecom. But of course, this is always going to look so much better because it is the PlayStation 1, and this is always such an iconic first boss in the game as well. Move over to the Gamecom version, and it looks correct. It's not perfect, but damn, it's a lot better than I would ever expect it to be. Now, of course, next week we're going to do the real episode on Symphony of the Night for this retrospective, but when stuff like this happens, it's so much fun to talk about, to hear who's heard of the release already, and hear the people that are going to find out just from this video it exists. You even get the intro cutscene with the Dracula, the continuation of Rondo of Blood that starts out on Symphony of the Night, but you don't actually get to fight Dracula. He just explodes due to nothing. It's actually kind of a funny look. I really don't know what causes him to do that. Now, you can emulate this game. I will leave a link below to the Gamecom emulator, and you can head over to Hidden Palace and pick up the ROM for it as well, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discoveries a lot of people get to make in this. But yeah, this is a bonus episode of Castlevania Chronicles. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's not often that a prototype Castlevania game comes out, but for the last 2 years, there's been one each year, and that's amazing. Sure that I'll see you next week for Real Symphony of the Night. Bye-bye.